So that means we're adding 4, but remember x's are weird, so that actually means it's a horizontal shift left 4 units. Okay, so that means we're going to be acting on the x values, and we're going to minus 4 from all our x values. So subtracting 4 from our x values, that's going to be 0, 4. 0, negative 4. 1 minus 4 is going to be negative 3. So we'll go with, ooh, I did that wrong. Should be negative 4, 0. So that's going to be negative 3, 1. So let me write this out actually. And then subtracting 4 from that, that's going to be 0, 2. 0, 2. All right. And the last transformation is minus 3. So that means we're going to do a vertical shift down 3 units. Okay, this affects our y values. So we're going to subtract 3 from the y values. Okay, so looking at our y values, that's a 0. So subtract 3 from 0. It's going to be negative 4, negative 3. Okay, that's our y value right there. Subtract 3 from 1, that's going to be negative 2. So we have negative 3, negative 2. Lastly, subtracting 3 from 2, that's going to be negative 1. So 0, negative 1. And there we go with our last one. All right, moving along, moving along. B. So what is the parent function? Take a second and see if you can identify and graph the parent function, and I'll check in with you in a second. Okay, so the parent function is the absolute value. Y equals absolute value of x. So graphing this one, 0, 0, 1, 1, and negative 1, 1. Okay, I'll go ahead and just work with those 3 points. So what are the transformations I see? See if you can figure out how many transformations there are. Well, we have that negative and then the 2. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do the reflection first. Okay, so that negative outside the parent function is going to be reflection about the x-axis, which means we're going to multiply the y values by negative 1. So multiplying the y values by negative 1, that'll be negative 1, negative 1. 0, well, multiplying 0 by negative 1 does nothing. Let me get a drink of my coffee here real quick. And then multiplying the other y value by negative 1, we'll get 1, negative 1. If I was making these a little bigger, I would bring out a straight edge to make sure these lines look nice. All right, so the second transformation, we have that 2 on the outside, which means that's going to be vertical shift. Vertical shift, and that's a positive, so it's going to be up. And how many units? 2 units. Okay, once again, remember these are kind of wordy, but please write it out the full description for me. And this means we're going to be adding 2 to the y values. Ooh, that just ended up hideous. Okay. Val u is, okay. 2 to the y values. So negative 1 Add 2 to that, that's going to be positive 1. So negative 1, 1. 0, comma 2, 0. Add 2 to the 0, and we get 0, 2. 0, 2. Adding 2 to the y value, we'll get 1, 1. Okay, and there we go, our final graph. Okay, next one. Ooh, a lot of numbers going on this one. Okay, let's take a second and identify the different transformations going on here. So we have the 3. That's going to be a horizontal transformation. We have that negative. Okay. That's going to be a reflection. And then we have that 2. That's going to be a stretch. We have that subtracting 1. So that's going to be a horizontal transformation. And that looks like it. So we have 4 transformations we're going to be working with here. So what is our parent graph? Well, that squared there gives me a hint. It's going to be y equals x squared. Okay, let's go ahead and graph that with the main known values, 0, 0, 1, 1, and negative 1, 1. And there she be. Okay, so what do you think the first transformation should be? Okay, so remember we start inside the parentheses. The inside of the parentheses, so think of PEMDAS. Normally you would do start inside the parentheses. Okay, so that's going to be negative 1, which means we're going to be shifting horizontally to the right. So horizontal. How many units? 1. Okay, so what we're going to do is add 1 to the x values. So adding 1 to the x values, that's going to be negative 1, 2. Oh, sorry, that's going to be 0, 1. Adding 1 to the x value, that'll be 1, 0. Adding 1 to the x value, that'll be 2, 1. And there we go. Next transformation, what do you think it's going to be? Okay, well, if you think of PEMDAS, we're going to look at the multiplication items, and we'll go with that negative there, which is the reflection about the axis. So multiply y values by negative 1. All right, so my y value is 1. Multiplying that by negative 1, we'll get 0, negative 1. Multiplying my y value by negative 1 does nothing. And multiplying my y value by negative 1, that's going to be 2, negative 1. And there we go. On the way, on the way. Okay, next one. So we've already done the negative and the 1. So our next piece would be the other multiplication, which would be the 2. So we're going to stretch by a factor of 2. Which means multiply the y. Okay, so all the y values, we're going to multiply them by 2. So let's see, my y values, so it's going to be 0, negative 2 then. 0, negative 2. That'll be 1, 0 still. Multiplying my y value by 2, I'll get 2, negative 2. Okay, and the last transformation is that 3 who's been hanging out so patiently. All right, so it's a positive 3, which means we're going to be doing a vertical transformation. So vertical shift. And it was a positive 3, so we're going to go up 3 units. So we're going to add 3 to the y values. Okay, adding 3 to the y values. So let's see. Negative 2 plus 3 would be positive 1. So we're going to do 0, positive 1. Adding 3 to 0, we'll get 1, 3. So 1, 3. And adding 3 to the negative 2, we'll get 2, 1. Two, 1. And we are done. Okay, so there we go. That was 4 transformations in the orders. So start inside with your parentheses and then work with the multiplications, and then lastly work with the addition or subtractions. Last example for this section, 2.6. Okay, we're looking at even and odd functions. So it has to do with the symmetry test we've been doing before. So a function is even, called even, if when you input the negative x value, you get back the original function, which means it's symmetric about the y-axis, as we did before. And a function is odd if when you input the negative value, you get back the opposite of your original function, which means it's symmetric about the origin. All right, so let's determine whether the function is even, odd, or neither. If it's even or odd, use symmetry to sketch the graph. Okay, so here's our function f of x. Let's go ahead and do the test, plugging in negative x. So if we end up with the exact same function, it's going to be even. If we end up with the opposite of our function, it's odd. Okay, so similar to the symmetry tests we've been doing before, plugging in that negative. That'll be negative x cubed plus 3x. Well, let's pull out a negative and see what we get. Ah, look, it's the opposite of my original function. So since it's the opposite of my original function, this means it's symmetric about the origin and that it's odd. So f of x is odd, as it is symmetric about the origin. That's probably a pretty bad habit I have right there of writing that. Okay, so let's go ahead and plot some points. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the positive x values and then graph these. Okay, so x values. So we'll go with 0, 1, and 2. So plugging in 0 to our function, that's going to be 0 cubed minus 3 times 0, which is going to be 0. So 0, 0. Okay, plugging in 1, that's going to be 1 minus 3, which would be negative 2. So I have 1, negative 2. And then 2, I'm going to have 2 cubed minus 3 times 2, which will be 8 minus 6, which is positive 2. So 2, 2. All right, so the next one. So using the fact that it's symmetric about the origin, what I know is that I can just take the opposites of the x and y. Okay, so that's going to be, well, opposite of 0, 0 is still going to be 0, 0. But opposite of 1, negative 2 is going to be negative 1, positive 2. And the opposite of 2, 2 is going to be negative 2, negative 2. So plotting those points, that's the same. We have negative 1, 2. And then negative 2, negative 2. And there is our graph, which is symmetric about the origin and odd. Okay, so there we go. That is it for 2.6. The written homework is attached. Email me if you have any questions.